Life at the Top by Sally Harton Young.
Do you know what the altitude is where you live? Altitude describes how far the land is above sea level. Mount Everest has the highest altitude of any point on Earth. The lowest altitude on Earth is not sea level, however. Some areas of land are lower than that. There is land around the Dead Sea that is over 1,000 feet, 300 meters below sea level. Many people on Earth live along the coasts of the oceans or in plains or valleys. These areas have a fairly low altitude, but some people live in high altitudes. The difference in these environments isn't just the view. The atmosphere is different in these different areas of the Earth. This can affect people's health and even change how their bodies work. Confirm or correct predictions. Make a prediction about what you will read in paragraph 4. Highlight details in paragraph 4 that help you confirm your prediction. Oxygen and health. Earth's atmosphere is a mix of different gases. It's mostly nitrogen, but about 1/5 of it is oxygen. There is the same amount of oxygen at sea level or at high altitudes. However, when people travel from a low altitude to a high mountain, they may feel like it's harder to breathe. That's because the air pressure is lower higher up in the atmosphere. This lets the oxygen atoms spread further apart, so when people breathe, they get less oxygen in their lungs. When a person from a lower area travels to a high altitude, this change in oxygen can cause altitude sickness. Altitude sickness can include headaches, dizziness, nausea, and even death. But over time, the human body can get used to high altitudes. Some athletes use these areas to train, and some groups of people have even been able to adapt to live permanently in very high regions of the world. Close read. Analyze text features. Underline details in the text that are supported by the photograph and graphic. Oxygen atoms at high altitude. Oxygen atoms at sea level. The High Altitude Training Center is located on the side of Kenya's Great Rift Valley. Living in a high-altitude region is not as easy as just moving there. People who come from sea level or other lower regions may get altitude sickness, but most will then become used to the higher altitude. Their blood will change to add more hemoglobin, a protein in blood cells that carries oxygen throughout the body. However, over time, the extra hemoglobin can cause health problems. These can be especially severe for pregnant women. But some groups of people have adapted. Their bodies have changed to live in high-altitude regions. Close read. Analyze text features. Highlight the text features that can help you pronounce key words. The Kalenjin runners. One group that is able to live at high altitude is a Kenyan people, the Kalenjin. The Kalenjin live along the Great Rift Valley. At the highest points, this area can be more than 7,000 feet, 2,100 meters above sea level. Living at this altitude seems to have helped many Kalenjin become great runners. The Kalenjin are known for being good runners. Many marathons with competitors from all over the world are won by Kalenjin people. Scientists have tried to understand what makes the Kalenjin such strong runners. They have suggested many ideas, such as their diet, their lifestyle, and the shape of their bodies. But many believe their running success has a lot to do with their home at high altitude. As a result, champion runner Lorna Kiplagat, a Kalenjin, has founded the High Altitude Training Center in Iten. She hopes to help other athletes improve their skills by training in high altitudes. She especially hopes to give other Kenyan girls and women the chance to train and develop excellent running skills. High altitudes affect athletes' bodies in different ways. These changes can help them improve their performance. People can improve their endurance and can hike, climb, run, and bike for longer than they can at sea level. That's because they have more oxygen in their blood. Their lungs change, too. They are able to take in more air. People breathe harder and deeper at higher altitudes in order to get the oxygen that they need. Close read. Analyze text features. Underline a sentence that is supported by the map and caption on page 124. Endurance. The ability to keep going. Scientists believe that spending time at high altitudes can also be healthy for people's hearts. As the body works harder for its oxygen, genes may turn on that make the heart muscles work more efficiently. Runners, in particular, benefit from high-altitude training because they become thinner, which may help them run faster. When people run, they jump forward into the air. The heavier they are, the harder gravity pulls on them, so lighter people can jump more easily. In high altitudes, bodies make more of a hormone that makes people feel full, so they eat less and lose weight. Training at a high altitude changes the rate at which the heart beats and how much blood it pushes with each heartbeat. The capacity of lungs increases at high altitude, so they can take in more air at once. High-altitude training can increase blood flow to muscles and let them do more work before getting tired. Close read. Analyze text features. Underline details that connect to the information in the diagram. All of these physical changes, greater lung capacity, heart strength, and endurance, can help athletic performance at sea level. For the Kalenjin people, combined with their lifestyle and diet, life at high altitude has led to a large number of champion runners, so many that others try to replicate their success by training in high altitudes themselves. However, Kenyans still often win marathons. In 2019, a rookie Kenyan runner won the women's division of the New York City Marathon. She beat another Kenyan woman who had won all but one of the last 5 New York City marathons. Kenyan men also won the top 2 spots of the men's division. So training at high altitude has not necessarily let people from elsewhere in the world beat the amazing Kenyan runners. Close read. Confirm or correct predictions. Use what you have read so far to highlight details that help you confirm or correct a prediction you made about life in high altitudes. Capacity. The ability to contain something. The Andean people. The Kalenjin people are not the only ones to live at high altitudes. In South America, the Andes Mountains run from north to south along the western side of the continent. Some Andean peoples have lived for centuries at 10,000 feet, 3,000 meters above sea level, or even higher. Today, the Andean people are not known as champion runners. But in the 1500s, the Incan Empire stretched along the Andes from modern-day Colombia through Chile. The Inca developed a 25,000-mile, 40,000-kilometer road system to connect their empire. It was the longest and best organized road system of the time. The Inca road was used only for official government business, such as sending messages and transporting food and soldiers. The Inca used a system of relay runners to carry messages and packages around their empire. Young men who showed a talent to excel at running were often chosen as chasquis. These short-distance relay runners began training at a young age. The job was so important that these messengers were freed from the work that most people had to do. A chasqui runner would run between 6 to 9 miles, 10 to 15 kilometers, before he met the runner to take the next stage of the relay. He would blow a shell trumpet to warn the next runner that he was almost there. Since the Inca had no written language, when chasquis were carrying a message, they had to tell it to the next runner for him to memorize. Others carried knotted ropes that were used to keep records. With this system, 25 runners could carry a message over 150 miles, 240 kilometers, in one day. Close read. Analyze text features. Underline information in the text that is supported by text features. Excel. Do well or be the best at something. Although the Chasqui runners no longer exist, the Andean people still live successfully at high altitudes. Scientists have discovered physical changes in the Andean people that make it possible for them to live in the Andes. People who live in low-altitude areas and come to high altitudes often have more hemoglobin in their blood after a while. Andean people also have large amounts of hemoglobin in their blood. However, their hemoglobin holds even more oxygen. That means the Andean people have more oxygen in their blood than other people do. This lets them have children at these high altitudes without health problems. However, they may still develop altitude problems in old age. Close read. Fluency. Read paragraphs 18 to 19 aloud with a partner. Pay attention to your rate as you read. Practice reading at a rate that will help your partner understand the text. Other physical changes may have helped the Andean people live at high altitudes. Some scientists believe their hearts changed to let more blood go to their lungs. The people also changed to be able to live on mostly potatoes, which grow well in the Andes. Some of these physical changes may have helped some of the Andeans survive the arrival of the Europeans in the Americas. Many Native American people were killed by the diseases the Europeans brought with them, like the deadly smallpox. However, the people who lived high in the Andes were much more likely to survive. The physical changes that let these people live at high altitudes may have also protected them from smallpox. Close read. Confirm or correct predictions. Highlight details that help you confirm or correct a prediction you made about the text. The people of the Tibetan plateau. The Andean people's bodies have changed so that they have more hemoglobin, but the people who live on the high-altitude Tibetan plateau have about the same amount of hemoglobin as people who live at sea level. They actually have less oxygen in their blood than others who live at or visit high altitudes. Instead, the people who live on the Tibetan plateau breathe more quickly than other people. Their lungs also have greater capacity. They can hold more air. They also have wider blood vessels in their lungs and throughout their bodies. These changes may mean that the Tibetan plateau inhabitants actually need less oxygen than other people do. As a result, they are not affected by the altitude sickness that people from low altitudes suffer, and that even Andean people can get in old age. But how is this possible? The Tibetan Plateau is a large, flat plain in southwestern China. It is surrounded by mountains and has a very high altitude. It reaches from 13,000 feet, 4,000 meters, above sea level to over 15,000 feet, 4,600 meters. It is called the roof of the world. And yet people have lived on the Tibetan Plateau successfully for centuries, maybe as long as 62,000 years. Scientists have recently discovered a surprising answer. They looked at the genes, or the pieces of the recipe that create our bodies. In people who live on the Tibetan Plateau, they found that 1 to 6% of their genes came from an ancient group called the Denisovans. These Denisovan genes may have given people who have them the ability to live at high altitudes. Close read. Confirm or correct predictions. Highlight details that help you confirm or correct a prediction about how the Tibetan people live in high altitudes. Vocabulary in context. Use context clues to determine the meaning of genes. Underline the context clues that support your definition. High-altitude Olympics. In 1968, the Summer Olympic Games were held in Mexico City. At over 7,000 feet, 2,100 meters, above sea level, Mexico City's altitude had an effect on the athletic competitors. This was one of the first times in which many people had thought seriously about the effect of the altitude on athletes. The effects of the high altitude during the Olympic Games were clear. One champion runner from Australia collapsed unconscious for 10 minutes at the end of his race. Other runners needed oxygen. On the other hand, Kenyan runners who had grown up and trained in high altitude took some of the top prizes. After these games, athletes and scientists became more aware of the effects of altitude on the human body. A few years later, the United States Olympic Committee moved its home office to Colorado Springs, Colorado, where athletes could train at an altitude of 6,000 feet, 1,800 meters. And of course, others can visit the High Altitude Training Center in Iten. Mexico City, Mexico, 7,350 feet. Great Rift Valley, Kenya, 7,000 feet. Life at high altitude. For some people, the drive to improve their athletic performance is what brings them to high altitude. Other people over the centuries, however, have had a simpler motivation: to find a place to live. The ancient people who moved to the Tibetan plateau or the Andes mountains did not know that their bodies could change to let them survive at the heights. They may not have known this was even necessary. They were simply looking for a home and found one at the top of the world. Andes Mountains, South America, 17,100 feet. Tibetan Plateau, Asia, 14,700 feet. Close read. Analyze text features. Underline details in the text that support what you see in the image. Drive. The ambition or urge to carry on. Motivation. A reason for doing something.